that God has put something of his beauty in us as his image bearers that is supposed to reflect him to people around us. And so I love that kind of washing away of ashes that gets replaced with this beauty that points people to the most beautiful one, Jesus Christ.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Proximity Podcast in partnership with Jubilee Plus. I'm here again with the epic, the legendary Natalie Williams, everybody.
It's the most ridiculous intro I've ever heard you do. Just because I did the intro last time, you felt like you had to do something ridiculous. How am I supposed to, and I'm here with the...
Well, you don't. Yeah, you made no effort to pick me up.
The costume-changing Sam Ward, who has changed his shirt every time we record this, just to make it look like for days and days on end, I have been wearing the same clothes.
Yes, and if black works, and that's your thing. I mean, everyone knows you now as the girl who wears black.
Do they?
All the time. Yeah.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Yes. So Isaiah 61.
Yes.
We've been on a journey now. We've been on a journey. We've made our way through the anointing of the Spirit and the good news to the poor, all the way through those amazing words that Jesus used as his manifesto from Luke's gospel. Now we move into the section that flows after the bit that Jesus spoke of, but yet the words are so incredibly powerful that I think we just crack on and dig in. So from verse 3, it says this, and provide for those who grieve in Zion and bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and the garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair. How amazing are those words?
Yeah, they're wonderful, aren't they? Isn't it just, I just love the fact that it's not just that God takes some of these negative things from us, like despair, like mourning, but actually there's a substitution that is so glorious that goes on. It's not just that God comes alongside and says, right, okay, you no longer have to mourn, you no longer have to know this despair, but you're just kind of at zero, you're at neutral. But then this beautiful bestowing, this head to toe covering in this passage, from ashes on your head to a crown on your head, from the mourning to the oil of joy, from this spirit of despair to a garment of praise. It's like we get fully clothed in all these wonderful good things. And I think so often when we're helping people in our communities or when we've been helped ourselves, it stops short of just the fullness of the glory and beauty of this passage. I'm content often to just, go, here's some food, here's some clothing, here's some shelter, maybe here's some money, here's some help for your crisis today. Not realizing that the full extent of the gospel is actually not just good news for this moment today, but good news for tomorrow and next week and the week after, and obviously for all eternity. But actually, there's something of where almost like our whole nature inwardly and outwardly gets transformed by the Spirit of God when we're anointed to bring good news to the poor.
It's almost like when I look back at those early verses around good news to the poor and freedom for the captive, it's almost like that looks a lot more like the mercy of God, but yet here we move into the grace. It's like the extra stuff. It's the stuff beyond the mercy of God. I love how it's referred to as the great exchange.
Yeah,
like I'll take from you this, but I don't leave you then empty. Let me just lay upon you something far greater. Which is completely in juxtaposition. It's the inverse of everything that you've experienced. The opposite is now afforded to you. And how incredibly powerful that is. And so you've got that, again, the imagery, isn't it so beautiful? So instead of ashes, which would cover all of you in shame and brokenness, like you're now adorned with a crown. And it's a crown of beauty. So the ugliness of ashes is replaced by a beauty of. I'm thinking about the coronation of King Charles this year. Have you ever read the statistics around the wealth and and how much it costs to be able to produce all that is the coronation, and the crown upon his head is something like, worth 400 million pounds or something like that.
And so heavy he can't even wear it for an hour because of the neck ache that he'd get.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It doesn't compare, does it, to what's on offer to those who are comforted by Christ.
Yeah.
There's this more beautiful crown which adorns the head of those who were once grieving.
Yeah. And I think when we're in grief and sorrow or poverty or oppression, we wear it outwardly, don't we? You can see it on people's faces. You can see. So we may not literally cover ourselves in ashes as they did in Old Testament times, but actually there's a demeanor, there's a physical kind of outward expression of what's going on inwardly when we are sad, when we are heartbroken, when we are in despair. It's kind of visible. It's written on our faces. And the fact that God will take that kind of headdress of ashes, if you like, that covering of black soot, just dark, sad, that he would take that and give us this crown of beauty. It's just so wonderful, isn't it? It's so extraordinary that God even cares just about this kind of physical outworking, how we look. And I love that I think it's Psalm 103, it says that he has crowned us with his tender mercies. And there's something of crowns draw attention, don't they? They're obviously to show the authority that someone's got, the position that someone's got. And ultimately, for those of us who are Christians, we're going to cast our crowns before the throne of Christ, aren't we? So actually, again, a bit like when we talked about comfort in the previous episode, crowns are also something that we don't talk about them as much as they seem to appear in the Bible. There's something of where God wants to confer on us kind of a dignity, a beauty, an honor, an authority, a status and a standing with him. It's not about impressing the world around us, but just our position in him means that we are crowned with something. We're crowned with these tender mercies. And unlike the king, King Charles, our crown isn't supposed to just say we're important, we're significant, we've got authority. It's supposed to point to the one who actually has all authority and all significance and is all powerful. And so our crowns aren't for our benefit. They're actually to point people to Jesus. And I think that means we need to be more mindful of the fact that we have been crowned with beauty, that God has put something of his beauty in us as his image bearers that is supposed to reflect him to people around us. And so I love that kind of washing away of ashes that gets replaced with this beauty that points people to the most beautiful one, Jesus Christ.
Wow, that's deep. But and actually, it's worth just you said it briefly there. You scooted over it. You said it's from him. It's his beauty.
Yeah,
and it's his crown, isn't it? And so you take something which is of us and our brokenness, and that's replaced by the eternal and a gift from God. This idea that he would bestow on us. It's him that lays a crown. It's him that dresses.
Yeah.
What an amazing image that he takes something eternal and beautiful and special, and then it's this moment in grief where there's a washing and there's a cleaning and then there's a preparing and then there's this him that lays the crown upon our heads. And what a wonderful thing! What a wonderful image that is. That it's him that's at work there.
Definitely. And it makes me think of in the New Testament where it says we have this treasure in jars of clay as well, isn't it? Because it's like we have this outward crown of beauty, this crown with tender mercies that's supposed to reflect his tender mercies to those around us. But then also within us, there's this just gleaming treasure of the gospel, isn't there? That we might be broken, as you said, we are jars of clay. We are fundamentally flawed in every way, aren't we? And all our motives are mixed. And yet there's this depth of treasure of the beauty of God, of the majesty of God, that actually we hold that within these jars of clay. But again, not for our own benefit, although obviously it's hugely beneficial to us personally, but also for the benefit of those around us, that we're not supposed to hide the treasure and think, well, I'm going to make my jar of clay as thick and dense as I possibly can so no one can see the treasure within. But no, the idea is that it should be reflected out. And that's why I like this image of a crown, because you can't hide a crown. If you put a crown on your head, whether it's a paper crown at Christmas or, the crown that's worth millions or billions or whatever that King Charles had to wear at the coronation. You can't hide a crown. If you've got a crown on your head. I know this from Christmas because I always get told off for taking mine off first. I
just wish I could fit one on my giant head. They always break when I try and get around my giant. Yeah, anyway.
That's a sad thing. I have the opposite problem where they fall down over my eyes. So we need to, make my head a little bit bigger and your head a little bit smaller. There needs a middle ground.
But the crown bestowed by Christ is well fitting, isn't it? It's perfect. Yes. It's been designed actually just for me.
Yeah.
He doesn't exchange your ashes and give you my crown.
No.
It's something that he's deeply doing personally with you, and that's a special thing. Let's move on then. We've got the oil of joy.
Yeah.
It's interesting what oil is used for, isn't it? They talk about when fasting in the New Testament, you don't put oil on your face so that people look, make judgments about whether you're fasting or not. And, there was something even about the complexion, wasn't there? But actually here's a new kind of oil, which will cover us all with joy from heaven. Again, that deeper, richer understanding of joy, not being happiness, not being momentary, but rooted in the eternal, straight from heaven. It's a gift from the throne room of Christ, isn't it, Joy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it sounds like you know a lot more about oil than I do, but in the last episode, we touched on the fact that Jesus was a man of sorrows, but Hebrews tells us he was anointed with the oil of joy beyond his companions or above his companions. And so for me, one of the things I love about this is one of the ways we get to be like Jesus. It's one of the ways that actually, just as Jesus was anointed with the oil of joy, now for those of us who are his followers, this is our inheritance. And it's not about feeling happy, as we've talked about. It's not about just kind of all circumstances being great and wonderful. And why wouldn't I have joy? Because life's just amazing. But actually, it's in the middle even of the sorrow that we can have an oil of joy instead of mourning. In my experience, it's often as well as. It's not always quite as stark as that. There can be mourning and joy actually hand in hand. But our inheritance, where we're heading, is that we will have fullness of joy. And that's what Jesus offers us, isn't it? Fullness of joy in his presence. And as we've talked about so much, in his presence is the key there, isn't it? Because what brings us the most joy is when we really get to know Jesus, when we really know his presence with us, when we know he's alongside us on the mountaintops and in the valleys. And so, I love this idea though of oil of joy running from Jesus to me and to you. That's just so precious, isn't it? To know that it's his oil of joy that now has been bestowed upon us.
I think there's an anointing there as well, though.
Yeah.
So we've had all the anointing, to enable us to proclaim good news, an anointing to bind up the brokenhearted and proclaim freedom. But now this is the anointing oil of joy. And I think that's a precious thing. I remember going to do a church weekend away for an estates church, and they'd asked me to preach on unity, I think, and I was using that passage from Psalms 133, I think, where it talks about the anointing oil flowing down the beard of Aaron, and so I had a big beard at the time. I know I've slimmed down somewhat on the beard shaping, but so I decided I was going to show them what that looked like.
Right.
And so I bought this like big bottle of, I think, vegetable oil, and I just poured it as the preach began. We gathered for the first time. Everyone's found their rooms and they're all a bit excitable. I put some like paper down on the floor, and then I just poured this vegetable oil down over the head and down the beard. And it just got in my eyes so bad.
This sounds like something you hadn't thought through.
I really hadn't. And because I wanted them to see visually this oil running down the beard. But honestly, I then couldn't speak because I couldn't get the gloop of oil out of my eyes. It's thick. And actually, what I love is oil is really hard to remove, isn't it?
Yeah.
once you've got oily hands.
Well, because water doesn't remove, what is it happens? I'm trying to have a science lesson.
Let's not do science now. This is not any of our bags.
But you can't wash it off easily, is what I'm trying to say. I'm thinking of this, even I cooked dinner for some of the Jubilee Plus team recently. This is a rare thing that happened. And I'd gone on a cookery lesson a few years ago, and they'd said, put a little bit of oil on your hands before you chop a chili, because it means that the chili doesn't get into your fingers. Because obviously if you get a bit of chili on your fingers, then you rub your eyes. That's painful, isn't it? So the chef had said, put a bit of oil on the tips of your fingers. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. This really happened, Sam.
I'm just imagining not being able to hold a knife.
Well, no, not that much oil. Okay, so not pour it over your hands like you poured it over your head. It's not that, but a little bit of oil. And it really does help. Then you wash your hands and the chili isn't on your hands. But my point about water and oil, which I'm making now really badly, was this is not cookery lessons with Nat, is that even just trying to wash up the things that I'd had to put oil in, like the tray for roasting some sweet potato and even the little measuring thing, I don't even know what it's called, but that I poured oil in to get the measure of it right. Washing those things up is a lot harder because all the oil rises in the water, doesn't it? And it almost contaminates the water. So my point was just to say that the substance of oil, like you're saying, is thick and resistant to being washed away.
Not easily removed.
Whereas ashes can be easily removed. I feel like we should have done this as a visual. This should only be a video where one of us is covered in ashes and one of us is covered in oil. And then we try and...
Who can clean faster?
Yeah, no. Okay, move us on. Save me from myself.
I like it though. I like the analogy. Actually, it's really tricky to remove the oil and the intention of God with his blessing and his anointing is that it resides and it remains and it's not swiftly moved on from. And maybe that's the nature of joy, why it's not happiness. Maybe happiness is temporary and momentary and would be quickly over and done with. But actually joy lingers and joy gets in your joints and it gets in your pores and it
protects you from chili.
It protects you from harm.
I'm sure there's more in this. Someone needs to email us or comment on this and make a better job of what we've just tried to communicate about oil, because I think there's a powerful preaching point here and it's just that you and I are butchering it.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
But mourning, it comes as a replacement for mourning.
Yeah.
Mourning isn't momentary, is it?
No.
Mourning and grief comes in waves and sometimes it's all the time, and sometimes you feel like you've gone through seasons where you're not grieving anymore, and then suddenly you'll be hit by a wave that you didn't expect. But if it's not over and done with the day that someone passes or the moment of loss, but it does reside with you, then you would need something that would be able to go alongside it for more than a moment, wouldn't you? We'd need joy that lasts, joy that's maintained, joy that we carry with us.
There is a verse, isn't there, about mourning lasts for a moment, but his favour lasts for a lifetime. Is that a song, or have I just made that? Am I now making up Bible verses?
I think it is a verse. If we had a researcher with us now, they'd run in and whisper in one of our ears, and those who are educated and good Bible readers would be able to tell you. But it is also a song that we sang during primary school.
But also, isn't there something of...
Joy comes in the morning.
Yeah, but that's joy comes in the morning. But where's the favour lasts for a lifetime bit? Yeah, I don't know. But I'm not disagreeing with you that mourning is not temporary. Mourning often does last for a long time. But I think compared to the joy that we will know, compared to his favour that is on us, actually the mourning will seem momentary with the benefit of hindsight. It doesn't in the moment. I mean, when I've been in seasons of mourning and grief, it feels like it's never ending. You feel like you're just stuck in a valley. In fact, a friend of mine said to me once, remember you're supposed to walk through the valley, not sit down in it. And I think often in times of grief, we can feel like we've got no choice but to sit down and almost take root in the valley. But there is this promise of this oil of joy that is going to come, and that actually we're going to know eternal joy. We're going to know pleasures forevermore. We're going to know that joy in his presence for all eternity. But also there is something that he does in us in the here and now, isn't there? Where even in those seasons of mourning, there's again this thing of when we know he's with us, when we know even in the valley of the shadow of death, he is with us. His rod and staff, they are there to comfort us. When he prepares that table before us in the presence of our enemies, And that's why David could say, surely mercy and goodness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, because actually there's something of the permanence of what God does that actually goes behind us and is ahead of us. And so for me, there's something in this passage of just that oil of joy comes from knowing I'm being pursued by the mercy and goodness of God, but I'm also heading to where I'm going to dwell in safety with him forever.
Love it. There's this temporal and eternal view, isn't there? There's the mourning that we feel like will go on forever, but yet will come to an end, because there is a day where there will be no tears that lies ahead of us. But I don't think that's the moment when joy begins. I think there's a promise for now, isn't there, as well? That even in this life of mourning and brokenness, we can still know the joy.
Yeah.
The joy of heaven. And it's going to be in all its fullness when we enter the glory that is to come. There's the temporal and the eternal in all at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Then we get this garment of praise, which I love. That's so cool. You were talking earlier about this head to toe imagery. Do you want to dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just really interesting, isn't it, that there's a crown where we've had ashes on our head. There's the crown, and there's the oil then running down, and then there's this garment, which implies like this kind of long robe that we're wearing instead of the spirit of despair. And so, for me, there's something of just the fact that this is thorough, it's robust, it's holistic. It's not just one bit and another bit of us is still struggling. It's actually something that God does. The whole person is involved. And I think there's something, although it doesn't talk about, the difference between body and spirit and mind and soul and heart and all these different things the Bible talks about, that I know people talk about us being in 3 parts, but I count at least 5 or 6, I reckon. And I don't understand how we all fit together. But what I do think about this passage is that there's something that is the whole of us, that is clothed, that is covered, that is renewed, that is restored, that this is not just about spiritual transformation, it's about physical transformation, it's about emotional transformation, it's about mental transformation. And so, that's for me kind of this kind of head to toe, 360 degree change that God brings into the lives of, if we go back earlier in the passage when it's talking about the poor, the brokenhearted, the captives, the prisoners, those who are mourning. And actually what God is wanting to do, what his vision is for those people, for us, when we're in those situations, is not a minor thing. It's not a temporary reprieve. It's not relief for a moment. It's something that is eternal and deep and rich and lavish and abundant. And so, for me, that's what I kind of get out of this passage, and others, combined with it. But if you've ever known despair, just this idea that a garment of praise, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you think, what are the opposites in this passage? They're not necessarily the things that we would put alongside each other as opposites. Even it doesn't say a garment of praise instead of a cloak of despair, or it doesn't say, what I would probably expect is a garment of hope instead of a spirit of despair. But actually it says a garment of praise. And, just this whole idea that where we've been in despair, where we've been in hopelessness, where we've been in a state where we know our utter brokenness, and what we get is this garment of praise where we've been so thoroughly changed and transformed that it's not just that we've now got hope. It's almost like hope's happened, hope's in the middle somewhere, but we've gone beyond hope. So like on a journey of despair to hope to praise, where we're now in a position where we know we've got so much to be thankful for. We've got such gratitude flowing out of us. It's like being covered in a garment of it, because we just want to praise and honor and worship the one who has made this difference in our lives.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I remember, I don't know if you were the same, but if you ever had new clothes as a kid, like we used to get trainers bought for us or whatever, or actually, sometimes we get a bag of hand-me-downs, and that day when you get to wear a new set of something. I remember one Christmas, me and my cousin both got the same coats from my gran, and it was just amazing that with just putting this on and waking up to the new. And I like to imagine it in this way. What it then evokes, what happens when I realize I'm dressed in something different.
Yeah.
And I see it. It's so beautiful in some of our community groceries. If you ever see people begin to experience the goodness of God, and what then begins to come from their mouths and what they explain as to what they're experiencing, and even without their Christianese, they're trying to put words to their the newness of them.
And often you can see it physically on someone's face, can't you? I remember going through a difficult time a few years ago, and then it's like this shift happened. Like kind of, it was one of those things where you've been really pursuing God and it feels like nothing's changing. And then there's like the gradually, then the suddenly, where something has been changing, but so gradually you almost can't see it. And then suddenly there's this movement and something's different. And I remember going to visit a friend who I would see every week during this time. And she was like, "You look different today. Like your face looks different. There's something different about you." And I've got a couple of friends who will often say to me at different seasons of my life, "Oh, you just look like you're glowing." I always joke and then go, "Yeah, I'm pregnant," which as a single woman devoted to the Lord is not true. But I like to make that comment. But there is something in our physical appearance that's changed, and
countenance,
also,
we call it, don't we?
Yeah, countenance. Yeah, that's a good word. But then there's also, like you said, the clothes we wear make a real difference, don't they? How we dress on any given day. I don't like the fact you've just rolled your eyes at me. Thank you for that. But do you know what? I've noticed since I started leading Jubilee Plus 3 years ago, my wardrobe hasn't changed because I hate clothes shopping. Like I really don't like it at all. And I can't be bothered. It's one of those things that I know I have to do it sometimes, but I'll do it as little as possible. If I go clothes shopping with friends, I'll try to buy as many outfits in one day as I can because I only want to do this like every 4 years or something. But there is something I've noticed for certain meetings, and especially if I think they're going to be difficult, I know that if I wear a hoodie, I'm not setting myself up to probably do well in those meetings or to feel kind of, I don't know what I want to feel, but I guess feel like an adult, actually, I think. And I love wearing a hoodie. I'm not saying that only kids should wear hoodies, and you were wearing one earlier, but I'm not saying that. But there is something of, I've got what people joke is my preaching jacket. I started speaking in churches on Sundays in 2016. And I've been wearing the same jacket ever since. And if it's a church I know really well, I don't bother wearing it now. But if it's a new church, typically I'll wear this jacket. It was 20 quid from a main high street.
Is it white
retailer.
like Benny Hinn?
It's not. It's grey. It's light grey. But it's become known as my preaching jacket because I always wear that. But there's something of when I put that on, it's not like it's anointed. It isn't. But I feel more confident in it. I feel more like, okay, when I'm going to a church I don't know, people don't know me, I want to look presentable, I guess. I want to look like, I don't know, almost like I think I can give off some sort of vibe of credibility from the anointed preaching jacket. It's not that, but there is something here that's really important around the clothes we wear and what we wear in different settings, and how I went to an event recently and I hadn't really thought through that it was probably going to be where people were well dressed, and I was in jeans. I wasn't in a hoodie. I was just in jeans and a pretty casual jumper. And I turned up and there was like a guy with a dinner jacket and bow tie.
I've done that.
Every guy was in a suit. In fact, there was one guy there, I know, a guy called Phil Knox from the Evangelical Alliance, great guy. And he was wearing trainers, but he was wearing a jacket. So I was like, I'm just going to stand near you. And if I feel like anyone's looking me up and down, I'm going to like kind of nod and I'll roll my eyes in the direction of your trainers just so that they, have something else to distract them from how I'm dressed. But you know how you feel when you're not dressed appropriately in a particular setting. And sometimes you go the other way, don't you? And you dress really smart and everyone else is really casual. And then either way you feel awkward. So there's something here of God dressing us in the appropriate clothing of praise, this garment of praise, which is actually what we're supposed to be wearing, the appropriate dress for the people that we are, for the setting that we're in. So that was a very long way of kind of saying that. And now I'm not quite sure where to go with it. But I do think there's something in what you said about new clothes. I remember having a shell suit when I was 13 and I didn't ever want it washed because I just wanted to wear it all the time. That's how cool I was.
I used to have some preaching socks that I wore every time I preached.
Okay.
Not because they were in any way like lucky socks or I didn't preach better with them on necessarily, but they were given to me by a North Korean refugee who if you've ever met her, you've probably received socks. I wasn't special because I received socks, but I felt they came with a promise that she was praying for the feet of those who bear good news. And so I used to love the fact that I got to wear the socks of someone who'd fled persecution in North Korea, who I knew was praying for me.
Wow.
But this is even deeper though, isn't it? Because this is a garment that has, again, come from heaven. This is God's design, God's weaving, God's promise, God's blessing that he has bestowed upon me. He's dressed me with it. His intention is that I would be covered in heavenly stuff. And I know that with that comes a promise that he's praying for me, or that his presence I'm somehow carrying. And it does bring out praise in me when I begin to think that his intentions are for me not to carry despair. I think, certain people are brilliant at being forever hopeful and optimistic. I wish I was that. I think I'm drawn to, if I'm not careful, I'm drawn into negativity. I'm drawn into despair. But Jesus' intention is for me to be dressed with something he's designed, something of great beauty and wonder. And that when I carry it, I'm going to cause praise in others actually as well, I hope. But also that my heart would begin to be one that sings his praise and sings of his goodness. And I struggle with this idea. I know there's a bit of a theme at the moment, and I'm sure there'll be comments made when I say this. I struggle with any songs that are around praise as a weapon. I struggle, when we write ourselves into Old Testament songs, and we've brought down the walls of Jericho, and we've defeated Goliath and various different things. I struggle generally with songs that we sing in churches like that. But I do think praise is powerful. Praise breaks something of the cycle of despair, I think, in me. And I think for me, often I'll meet people to talk about, what's going on in their lives. And I'll talk about gratitude and praise as a way in which we counteract our default into depression or cynicism. I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about the heaviness which we keyboard. If we're struggling to connect with God, I say, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look at his mercy, look at his grace, and begin to raise praise again and thanksgiving that will shift something within us. And I think that's part of the story here.
And I think there's an application for how we look at our communities and where we live, and the good we want to do where we live, and the impact we want to have in bringing transformation, because there can be places of despair. Places where it seems like there is no hope. I know in Hastings where I live, there'd be pockets of the community where it's just like, well, the kids don't do well at school. People are sick or disabled. There's a lot of unemployment for various reasons. There's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. And those areas seem like areas of hopelessness where even the life expectancy might be 10 years lower than a place like 2 miles down the road, because of this kind of spirit of despair that hangs over it. And so for those of us who love Jesus, you think actually there's something of us being clothed in this garment of praise that isn't just about us. And it's actually not even just between us and the Lord. It's something of bringing this praise, bringing this gratitude, bringing something of, it's not blind optimism, and it's not like kind of a ridiculous hope that is founded on nothing. It's a solid hope that is founded on the fact that God cares, and that we have a part to play in bringing that hope, bringing that praise, bringing that gratitude, bringing that transformation to our communities. So like all the things we talk about, it's not just for us, is it? It's also for those around us as well.
That's it. And what a way to land. We wear his crown that other people might see the king. We are drenched in the oil of joy, just to draw attention again to the joy found only in Jesus. We carry the garment of praise and hopefully stir people to worship and to praise and to be thankful to the God who makes a way where there doesn't seem a way. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for joining us on this podcast journey. We will see you as we move on into episode 8. It's been great to have you. See you soon.